I just received a notification from the City of Owen Sound. I believe they're just working on some technology right now, so we may just pause a few more minutes before getting started if we could.
Thank you.
Brianna at the city, are you able to hear us okay?
Yes, we are. Thanks, Tara.
Okay, you're ready to proceed then?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, Madam Warden, I believe all municipalities are ready to go, and as is communications.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I'd now like to call to order this special joint County of Grey meeting with all councils present on March 21st, 2025. At this point in time, as you are able, please stand and join us for the singing of O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. At this point in time, we will begin the roll call. And what I will do is I will look to each of the municipalities, the member municipalities. I will look to the clerk to provide us with the account of those who are present from each lower tier council. So we'll begin with the Township of Chatsworth, and I'll look to CAO and clerk, Patty Cinnamon.
Good morning, Madam Warden. From the Township Chatsworth, Mayor Scott Mackey is present, Deputy Mayor Terry McKay, and Councillor Liz Thompson.
Okay, thank you. And next we'll look to the Township of Georgian Bluffs. So we'll look to Clerk Craig.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Good morning. We have Mayor Sue Carlton, Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn, Councillor Rick Winters in attendance. We are expecting Councillor Isaac Schuldeis, but I do not see him online as of yet. For minute-taking purposes, staff present include myself and CAO Niall Logley.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to the Municipality of Grey Highlands. We'll look to Clerk Van Alstyne.
Good morning, and through you, Madam Warden. We have in attendance today Mayor McQueen, Councillor Allen, Councillor Allwood, Councillor Dubik, Councillor Lowhead, and Councillor Wickens.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go to the Town of Hanover. I'll look to Clerk McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Warden. This morning, my apology, my video won't start. This morning we have Mayor Sue Patterson, Deputy Mayor Warren Dickert, Councillor Susan Sackle, and Councillor Harold Fleet in attendance.
Thank you. And we'll go to the Municipality of Meaford and we'll look to Clerk Wilton Siegel.
Good morning, thank you. We have all elected members present with the exception of Councillor Bell.
Thank you. And the City of Owen Sound, I'll look to Clerk Bloomfield.
Thank you. Through the warden, all members of Owen Sound Council are present except for Councillor Kukrasia.
Thank you. And next we'll go to the Township of Southgate and I'll look to Clerk Green.
Good morning, Madam Warden. We have our Mayor, Brian Milne, Deputy Mayor Barbara Dobreen, Councillor Jim Ferguson, and Councillor Joan John. Mayor Milne is just having a bit of connection issues, but he should be back momentarily.
Thank you. And next to the Town of Blue Mountains, we'll look to Clerk Giles.
Good morning, Madam Warden. Town of Blue Mountains has Councillor Ardell present, Deputy Mayor Bourdignon, Councillor Maxwell, Councillor McKinley, Councillor Porter. Councillor Hope is absent today and our mayor is attending as the warden today. Thank you.
Thank you. And the Municipality of West Grey, I'll look to Clerk Eckenswiller.
Good morning, and through you, Madam Warden. From West Grey, present are Deputy Mayor Tom Hutchinson, Councillor Doug Hutchinson, Councillor Doug Townsend, Councillor Scott Forrester, Councillor Jeffrey Shea, and absent are Mayor Kevin Eccles and Councillor Joyce Noon.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the Grey County Land Acknowledgement. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that we are gathering on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg Nation, the people of the Three Fires, known as the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi nations. And further, we give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, known collectively as Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the traditional keepers of these lands and waters since time immemorial. To our south lies the traditional territories of the Six Nations of the Grand River. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and friendship with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Item number 5 is a declaration of interest, so I'll put it out there right now. If there are any declarations, please indicate by raising a virtual hand. Okay, seeing no hands raised, we will move on then to the adoption of the agenda and procedures. Grey County will maintain all records of this meeting. This assembly today is one large body and a quorum is 50% plus one of all elected officials across Grey County. Any votes taken today will be determined by a simple majority vote, and we are all acting together during this meeting. All elected officials here today have the opportunity to speak and vote. Okay, so with that then, we will move on to the recommended motion. It is, and I'll look for a mover and a seconder, and I'll ask for a virtual hand to go up for that. So I'll read out the recommended motion. It's recommended that the special Grey County Joint All Council meeting adopts the contents of the agenda as presented and Grey County Procedural Bylaw 513422 to govern the procedure of its March 21st, 2025 joint meeting of Grey County and all the municipalities of the Town of the Blue Mountains, the City of Owen Sound, the Township of Georgian Bluffs, the Municipality of Meaford, the Township of Chatsworth, the Municipality of Grey Highlands, the Town of Hanover, the Municipality of West Grey, and the Township of Southgate. And that quorum shall be determined by 50% plus one of all elected officials across Grey County, and that votes taken be determined by a simple majority vote. And in order to facilitate the number that we have here being represented, when we come to a vote, I will simply ask if there are any opposed, and then I'll ask for any hands to be raised if there are any opposed. And the clerks who are managing the votes in the chamber can respond by putting a virtual hand, and we'll check in with the clerks at that point in time. Okay, so with that then, may I ask for a mover and a seconder? Okay, so I see I have it moved by Tom Hutchinson, who is Deputy Mayor of West Grey, but also Councillor of Grey County, and seconded by, sorry, the hands keep moving here, seconded by Terry McKay, Deputy Mayor of Chatsworth and County Councillor. Okay, so thank you very much. So it is now moved and it's on the floor. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no hands up, I'll ask, are there any opposed? Please raise a virtual hand. Okay, Madam Clerk, I see no virtual hands raised, therefore I declare that this motion has passed.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move on to item number 7, which is the adoption of the minutes, as we had a previous meeting last summer. So the special Grey County joint all council meeting minutes dated August 8th, 2024. It's recommended that the special Grey County joint all council meeting minutes dated August 8th, 2024 be approved as presented. May I get a mover and a seconder? I see it moved by Deputy Mayor Dobreen of Southgate, also Councillor Dobreen, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Dickert of Hanover, also Councillor Dickert at county level. Okay, it's now been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no hands up for discussion, I'll ask, are there any opposed? Madam Clerk, I see no hands raised to be opposed. Okay, next we'll move on to item 8, which is the report. The recommendation for consideration is in the staff report that will be presented is as follows. It is recommended that report PDR SJM 1925 be received, and that correspondence be sent to each member municipality in Grey County requesting any interested municipality to indicate its support in principle for a hybrid planning service delivery model by no later than May 9th, 2025. May I ask for a mover with a virtual hand? Thank you. It's moved by Mayor Mackey of Chatsworth, also Grey County Councillor, seconded by Mayor Patterson of Hanover, also County Councillor. So it's been moved and seconded, is now on the floor for discussion. What we will do first is we will look to the Deputy CAO, and then he will then, after an introduction, he will look to Director Taylor for a presentation, and then we will begin a discussion of questions and questions for clarification with staff here present. So with that, Deputy CAO Schertzer, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you, Warden Madrasovs, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining the meeting today. We wanted to bring all the local municipal councils together again, just to provide an update on the centralized hybrid planning services model investigation so that everyone can hear the update at the same time, and to also ask any clarification questions as it relates to the staff report. We're going to provide an overview of the questions and comments received from each of the local municipalities, and I want to thank those municipalities for being able to provide those comments. We truly appreciate you taking the time to provide the initial feedback on this proposed model. Through the overview, we're going to also identify how we think those comments and questions can be addressed through either changes to the proposed model, as well as some next steps through further investigations and discussions with the local municipalities. What we'll do is we'll go through the entire presentation, and then we'll open it up for any clarification questions at the end of the presentation. Just wanted to highlight there's no formal decisions regarding the implementation of the potential model are being recommended or being discussed or considered today. What staff are recommending is that this report be received and that correspondence be sent to each municipality requesting any interested municipality to indicate their support in principle for a hybrid planning service delivery model by no later than May 9th. From a staff perspective, we just need to know what municipalities are supportive of the model in principle so that we can develop the potential staffing model, the financial model, as well as understand further specific service delivery expectations from the interested municipalities. It should be noted that municipalities will not be committing to participation in the model through that in-principle support. Municipalities will be given the opportunity later in the process to fully opt in or opt out following that detailed financial review and following those further discussions with each of the municipalities. Again, part of the next steps, which we'll get into later on in the presentation, is developing a draft memorandum of understanding, which we will discuss further in the presentation. Next slide, Scott. So just to recap why this model is even being investigated. So in February of 2024, Grey County staff presented a report to County Council with input from member municipal staff, and we prepared a series of planning process efficiency recommendations in that staff report. That report was supported by County Council and was shared with each of the member municipalities. And I'm pleased to say that many of the efficiencies identified in that report have since been implemented at the county and municipal levels. Stemming from that planning efficiency work, staff were directed to research other planning service delivery models. And so through some closed and open session staff reports, we provided information on alternative service delivery models, including a centralized service model. Municipalities, again, provided feedback on a centralized service delivery model through staff reports and council resolutions. And were asked for that initial input as part of those early investigations of this potential model. And again, thank you for taking the time to go through that with your councils and staff and for discussing this potential model. There was a public webpage that was developed on the county's website to get public and developer feedback. And staff did receive some written and verbal feedback on the service delivery model, some of which were supportive of investigating the model further. Others were not supportive of the model and were happy with the current services that are delivered at both the county and municipal levels. And others were supportive of the model for some municipalities that have, say, smaller planning departments, but were happy with status quo for municipalities that have larger staff complements. Next slide, please, Scott. So we wanted to provide a bit of a recap on some of the potential efficiencies we might see from the proposed service delivery model. One of the potential efficiencies is avoiding any potential duplication of review and processing efforts by having a single planner and planning department receive and process applications. And this would be applications like a subdivision application or an associated zoning amendment for a single proposed development. It could be then just one planner reviewing all those applications that are associated with that development. Right now, as council staff are aware, rather than having both municipal and county planners reviewing the same application materials, it could be potentially being done by one single planner. Another potential efficiency is efficient one-stop customer service for inquiries and applications. So rather than having to speak with both municipal and county staff, landowners could speak with a single planning department to get answers to their planning questions. We also think through the new model, we could have more in-house policy expertise. That could lead to less use of consultants and greater retention of institutional knowledge. Another potential efficiency is the ability to better share information between municipalities. Most planning issues are not unique to one municipality. And as such, if a municipality develops a solution under a centralized model and can share with another municipality, this saves all municipalities time and money in finding solutions to challenges and problems that are common to each of us. Another potential efficiency is just greater resiliency to both staffing changes and in times where we see higher and lower volumes of development applications, be able to adjust and have some flexibility in those situations. So again, by having a larger team, the proposed model would make individual municipalities less susceptible to delays, where a planner may leave a municipality or is off for an extended absence, especially in cases where a municipality has one or two planners. In peak times, more staff could be allocated to development files in a given municipality, whereas in slower times, staff could be allocated in another municipality or to policy planning or research. Another potential efficiencies is the ability to attract and retain staff who may wish to be part of a larger planning team and to see growth within a single organization. Having a larger team covering a broader geography may also give opportunities for a wider array of planning issues. So that's another potential opportunity. Another opportunity is the ability to provide greater peer-to-peer mentoring and career development, as well as some training opportunities or conferences where we could, especially for conferences that offer group discounts. So having a larger planning team may allow the county and participating municipalities to utilize these discounts and to offer in-house training where there's a critical mass to do so. So we have some further details to work out with the proposed model, but we want to highlight the potential efficiencies and benefits that could be seen through this proposed model. Next slide, please, Scott. Okay. So a summary of the questions and comments from the municipalities, including a county staff response, are provided in Appendix 1 to the staff report. We'll highlight some of the key common areas of questions and concerns that in today's presentation and how we think those can be addressed. But if you haven't had a chance to review all the comments and questions and responses in that appendix, and it is a large document, so it might take a bit to go through, but we would encourage everyone to do so. Some of the common areas of questions or concerns received from the municipalities include impact on other municipal departments and other roles served by planners. So most development applications require coordination with various staff, whether it's engineering staff or engineering consultants, public works staff, building staff, as well as others. And it was noted that the model would need to be designed to ensure that the relationships and processes with other local municipal staff are maintained. It was also noted that municipal planners perform other roles beyond just development application review and policy work, and wanting to ensure that the model will continue to provide those services, and again, which those can be discussed further with municipalities as part of the next steps. In terms of service delivery, customer service impacts include location and timing of service. So when it comes to service standards, these would be detailed through what we would consider the draft memorandum of understandings with each of the municipalities. And we'd work with those municipalities to ensure that the services being delivered meets the expectations of the municipality. And Scott will provide some further details regarding these proposed MOUs. Another comment we heard is about application processing and approvals. And in terms of approvals, no approval authorities would change under this new model. So municipal councils and committees would still make the same decisions that they currently do, as well as county council would still make the decisions that they currently do on planning applications. Under the new model, the proposal will be that all applications would be submitted to the county, so that way they can be processed and administered centrally. Another comment we heard is around communications and reporting to staff and councils and committees. And the proposed memorandum of understanding would spell out the communication chain between municipal staff and the centralized planning staff. And this could include things like regular communications and meetings at the director or senior levels to ensure that the services are continuing to meet expectations and then to make any adjustments if necessary. We also heard some comments around things like financial considerations, IT considerations, municipal record keeping and human resource matters, timelines and transitional considerations. What do agreements and legal matters look like? As well as questions around the memorandum of understanding, as well as some other comments and questions. And these matters will be part of the next steps, including further discussions and analysis with each of those municipalities who are supportive in principle of the model. And again, Scott will talk about this further in the presentation. I just wanted to note too that the Town of Blue Mountains did pass a motion opting out of the centralized planning service delivery model, and just want to thank Town Council and staff for reviewing the potential model and putting forward the staff report and comments. I'll now turn it over to Scott to go through the rest of the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Randy, and good morning to everybody. So I will just move on to the next slide here. So after, as Randy mentioned, we had the initial discussions last summer, and we got that round of municipal feedback in that regard. And similar to Randy's comments, I would thank all the municipalities, both council and staff, for their very thoughtful feedback in that regard. After that initial feedback was received, county staff presented a report to County Council PDR CW 6324 to seek additional direction from County Council on investigating service delivery models. When we first started this discussion last year, the proposal at that time was a centralized model, including all 9 municipalities and the county working together under a central system. However, as Randy noted, there was some questions and concerns with the model, and there was also one municipality that opted out of the centralized model. As such, county staff went back to County Council seeking direction to investigate a hybrid model. And at that time, staff hadn't asked municipalities to opt in or opt out per se, but based on some discussions with staff and some of the feedback received, county staff thought that there might be approximately 2/3 of the 9 municipalities that would be considering a model, which we thought would still have significant benefit and critical mass to supporting a hybrid model in that regard. Through that November 2024 staff report, County Council gave direction to continue to investigate this model, as well as to set up a further joint council meeting, which is the meeting we're in right now. I will say there is precedent for hybrid models across the province, and most locally, Wellington County currently uses a hybrid model where they provide local and county planning services to some of their municipalities, and some of their municipalities are under a 2-tier system where there's planners at the local and county level. So what does a hybrid model look like potentially for Grey County? For Grey County under hybrid model, some municipalities would opt in to participate in the hybrid model. And for those municipalities that do opt in and sign those memorandums of understanding, as Randy was talking about, the county would provide both county and local planning services to those municipalities. For those municipalities that chose to opt out of the model, the planning system would remain status quo, and we would continue with the existing 2-tier service delivery model in that regard. For those municipalities that opt in, as I said, we would need to dig further into those future memorandums of understanding to spell out the service delivery terms between the county and member municipalities. And I will say in that regard, we wouldn't be recreating the wheel here. We've talked to some of our colleagues in other counties who are willing to share examples of their existing memorandums of understanding that we could use as a template to create a made in Grey memorandum in that regard. And those memorandums would generally largely be similar between each participating municipality, but we know that there will be some service delivery needs that might be unique to one municipality, or there might be some service delivery needs that may vary by municipality. So across our 9 municipalities right now, they all have different service levels in their planning department. Some don't have a full-time municipal planner. Some don't have a planning service at the counter 5 days a week, whereas others do. So we see these future memorandums of understanding as the ability to dig into what those service delivery needs are, and the ability to offer each of the participating municipalities in-office service delivery at the level that they require, and that's negotiated through those memorandums of understanding in that regard. Sorry. Okay, on to the next slide. So based on the feedback received, one of the key comments, and Randy touched on this in his slides, is the importance of relationship building. And that relationship building is often between the planners and the other departments, as Randy mentioned, Public Works or your Roads Department or Parks and Recreation. But there's also the importance of relationship building between the planners and municipal councils or municipal committees in that regard. So with respect to the service delivery that would be offered to participating municipalities that have opted into this hybrid model, staff would look to have as much consistency as possible with planning staff serving those individual municipalities. So if your municipality said that you wanted in-person service, 3 days a week, as much as possible, we would try to have similar names and faces in there for that in-person service. So those relationships could be in some cases continued, and in other cases strengthened. However, one of the benefits to the hybrid model and all working together in this regard would be having a little bit of extra flexibility in this regard. And Randy touched on this as well, but simply put, if one municipality were to get extra busy with their development or policy work, and there was another municipality that was less busy at that time period, maybe you'd need to bring more staff into the busy municipality and have a lesser staffing complement for the municipality that's not as busy. Or similarly, if you had a municipality where the county planner took a job elsewhere, or perhaps went on parental leave, then you have those abilities to hopefully fill that short-term gap with a planner that's already working under the county model. So that's one of those key benefits, whereby if you're an existing municipality that has a single incumbent planner and that planner leaves or goes on a leave, then you have no planning resources in this regard. So by working together as a team, we see the ability to help supplement the needs during peak and valley times in that regard. As Randy mentioned, it is crucial to note that under the hybrid model, the approval authority is not changing. So municipal councils would still approve zoning amendments, committees of adjustment would still approve minor variances, site plans would still be delegated to staff as per the requirements of the Planning Act, and the county would still continue to approve those applications that the county already does, including county official plan amendments, municipal official plan amendments, and subdivisions and condominiums, with the exception of the City of Owen Sound, who has slightly different approval roles in that regard. As Randy mentioned, for those municipalities that opt into this hybrid model, the applications would be filed directly with the county, and those in theory could be filed digitally, or they could be filed either at the county offices or the municipal offices. We want to make it as easy as possible for those that are utilizing the system, whether you be a developer or a resident filing a system, or whether you be an interested party that's looking to learn more about planning or provide comments on a planning application or policy matter in that regard. For our status quo municipalities that might choose to opt out of the hybrid service delivery model, the county would still be a commenting body on municipal applications and would still continue to be that approval body where that relationship already exists. And as Randy mentioned, and I'll probably say this about 3 more times in my presentation today, there's still lots of additional details to be investigated in this new model, including the financials, the IT, the legal, the service levels, etc. And simply put, we couldn't determine all those details just yet until we understand who's going to be a part of this model and who might not be a part of the model, should municipal councils and county councils see fit to proceed with a hybrid service delivery model in that regard. And so with that, following that November report and some additional research, county staff met with the municipal CAOs and had a separate meeting with the municipal planners early in 2025. As part of that meeting, staff wanted to provide responses to the thoughtful feedback we got in the later part of 2024. And we had shared with both the CAOs and the municipal planners a version of what you see in Appendix 1 attached to the report today, such that both at the CAO level and at the planning staff level, they could see some of the early responses to those comments that were put forward by the municipalities. With respect to the CAOs, the feedback we got from the CAOs at that meeting early this year, there was a number of the municipal CAOs that saw merit in proceeding with further investigations. At the very least, it would inform both municipal and county council's future decision making on this topic. Some noted that their read of their municipal councils was that they would be in support of a centralized or hybrid planning service delivery model. Others noted that their councils still had some outstanding questions and maybe some concerns that they'd like to see further investigated. And as Randy has noted, Town of Blue Mountains Council had already opted out of the new model, so their CAO shared that feedback in that regard. With respect to the feedback we got from the municipal planning staff, it was a great discussion, a spirited discussion. And there were some that either in that discussion or through subsequent emails or phone calls expressed support for a new model or a hybrid model. They saw that as potentially beneficial going forward and interesting to be a part of. However, there were a number of municipal planners that had some outstanding questions and concerns with respect to the new model. And staff had expected this. Anytime we're looking at a change potentially of this magnitude, there's going to be lots of differing opinions and there's going to be lots of questions, and it will take a lot more investigation. With respect to some of the questions and concerns we heard from municipal staff in that regard, they're detailed in the report, but I'll just highlight a few of them here now. There were some questions about if we went to this hybrid model, or if their municipality opted into this hybrid model, would it truly result in more timely planning decisions? Would we see speedier planning decisions in that regard? And what would those final costs be? Would it be more cost effective? And as Randy's already mentioned, we do still need to further dig into those financials. Some question whether or not a hybrid model, depending on how many municipalities were to join the model, would actually provide adequate staffing at both the development planning levels and the policy planning levels, and whether we had adequate customer service levels at each municipality. Some gave detailed descriptions of the current customer service in person that they have at their municipality, and thought that at a minimum they would want to see this replicated under a new model, which is of course completely understandable. Some of them also talked about the many hats that municipal planners wear as municipal staff. And so, while in front of council, you might be most accustomed to seeing some of the development planning applications or some of the policy planning roles. In many cases, municipal staff, just like county staff, are involved in other local municipal committees. They might be involved in some of what we call planning adjacent services, such as maybe development charges inquiries or building inquiries, working with your chief building officials. They might also be involved in reviewing community improvement plan application submissions. So if the county and some select member municipalities were to go to a hybrid model, how would some of those what we call planning adjacent service roles be filled in this regard? As we mentioned earlier, there was lots of talk about the existing relationships, and in some cases, the relationships that have been built over many years between municipal planners and other planning departments or peer reviewers that serve the development application review process. And staff do see that the need to continue these relationships and strengthen relationships in that regard. We also talked at that meeting about not recreating the wheel. If a municipality already has a wonderful internal review system whereby it's going through, say, an internal development review committee, and that's working well, then there might not be a need to make any changes to that scenario in that regard. From a planning perspective, some of the planners also highlighted the potential for a conflict scenario between two municipalities. And so if you had a county planner working under this new model that's serving municipality X and municipality Y, and municipality X and Y couldn't see eye to eye on a particular planning matter, where would that place the individual municipal staff or county staff person in that regard? Staff also had questions about what happens to those staff that may choose not to join the hybrid model. And there are some responses to this in the municipal response table. And we've worked very closely with our Director of Human Resources in this regard, Jennifer Moreau, who's also been in touch with municipal HR professionals in that regard to talk about the options in this regard. As Randy noted, there was talk about IT platforms and if different municipalities are using different software systems, or that software is different from the county, how would those softwares communicate with one another? And there was some good talk about records management in that regard. There was also questions about whether or not there'd be additional municipal consultation or consultation with developers and the public on a hybrid service delivery model. And there was further inquiries about when a decision would be made and what the timelines for that decision or potential transition would be in that regard. And certainly we don't have a timeline just yet for any decision, and we welcome any feedback through today's discussions or through those future municipal discussions on what a reasonable time frame might be in that regard. So with respect to some of the next steps and some of the further information that's required, as both Randy and the warden have noted, this joint council isn't being asked to make a decision on the hybrid model here today. Rather, it's to receive the report and to pass it back to the member municipalities for their further consideration at the municipal council table. If the county doesn't receive a in-principle support motion from any given municipality, staff will assume that they're not interested in pursuing the hybrid model at this time and won't include them in some of those further investigation discussions that I'm going to talk about in just a minute here. As Randy mentioned, the in-principle support motion is not a firm commitment, but rather it gives county staff and council an early indicator of who might be interested to start to further flesh out that hybrid model, including the financials, the staffing levels, and the various other needs that need to be investigated before individual municipal councils and ultimately county council can make a decision in that regard. So following the in-principle support motion, staff envision the following next steps. And these are, of course, subject to change, but this is what we've mapped out at this stage. We've had some really great group discussions with municipal CAOs and municipal planners at this stage. But we think to really dig into the details and really dig into those desired service levels at each individual municipality that's potentially participating, we'd set up one-on-one discussions, including the municipal CAO and including the municipal planners or directors in that regard, to talk about what this hybrid model might look like for your municipality. We've talked about drafting those memorandum of understanding templates, and as I said, we could model those off of what some of our neighbors are already doing in that regard, and sharing those early on for consideration first and foremost by staff. But then also by county and municipal councils to understand what those service delivery standards would look like in that regard. We also want to dig further into some of the nuances of how those existing hybrid service delivery models function at other counties. We'd really like the sort of good, bad, and ugly descriptions from maybe the municipal planners or economic development officials with respect to the opportunities that a hybrid service might offer and some of the pitfalls or challenges that we might want to be thinking about even at this very early stage. Once we have a better understanding of who might be in principle, we could start to build that staffing and organizational chart in that regard to help everybody understand what that might look like. And again, that leads directly to those service delivery standards. We would, of course, work with both county and municipal finance staff, as well as IT, HR, clerks, and legal staff to further cost out the model, and dig into some of those detailed questions that were shared by municipal staff and municipal councils. So getting into things like emails, and so if some of those emails are records, where do those records get stored? Do they get stored at the county level or municipal level? Getting into, as Randy mentioned, some of the agreement matters. So if your municipality has approved a site plan application and there's a site plan agreement that's needed, how is that being reviewed by say the hybrid planning department and internal agreement staff or legal staff in that regard? There's similar considerations certainly with clerks and human resources in that regard. And so internally, we've been referring to this hybrid service delivery model as a bit of an onion, and there's multiple layers to it. And maybe we've investigated some of the top layers at this stage, but we really need to dig into the core of the onion, if you will. One of the other things that would need to be looked at If we are looking at centralizing some of these application services, is potential updates to the county fees and services bylaw, as well as updates to some of the participating member municipal fees and services bylaws in that regard. One of the things we've talked about in this regard is that the application fees would be coming to the county to help fund this centralized service delivery model. But there might still be the need for municipal application fees to fund some of those other internal staff resources, such as your public works or engineering staff, that are an integral part of reviewing development applications. And as I mentioned earlier, we'd certainly want to investigate the transitional matters and the timelines for the potential implementation of a hybrid model if there is direction to proceed. With respect to the next steps and those in principle support motions, we've been looking at this the whole way along as having a certain critical mass of municipalities in the county working together to really achieve some of those benefits that Randy had previewed through his slides. And so if after May 9th, we only get a very limited support for the hybrid model, then staff might need to evaluate our options to see if there is that critical mass to still achieve those benefits, or maybe there's another model that needs to be further explored, or maybe we need a bit of a pilot program in that regard. Should we be in a situation where there's no support for a hybrid model, then the status quo will continue at both the county and municipal levels, and staff can continue to focus on some of those planning process efficiencies that can still be achieved again at both the county and municipal levels in that regard. So with respect to some of the financial and resource implications, again, we don't have those detailed financial costings just yet, but we look forward to digging into those further once we have responses on those in principle municipal support motions in that regard. And those further memorandum of understandings are where we're really going to dig into those service levels, and those service levels will of course have a direct impact on the financials. There's nothing in the 2025 county budget for implementation of a hybrid model in 2025. And at this point, as I mentioned, we don't have a firm timeline for when such a model would be implemented. As such, if we're looking forward to our own county and your own municipal budget processes leading into 2026, there might need to be some money set aside in 2026 if that is the if that is the supported time frame for starting to implement a hybrid service delivery model. If we get into a situation where not all details are known, but we're doing some early work in 2026, there might need to be some interim funding considerations, or maybe some transfer payments between municipalities and the county to look at the early phases of rollout of the model in that regard. And then, as I've noted, we would continue to dig into the IT, HR, clerks, legal, and other staffing considerations that would be associated with this model. With respect to the hybrid services delivery model, one thing we really want to look at further and give both municipal councils and county council a better idea of is the relationship between those participating municipalities in terms of funding this model, but then also the relationship between those municipalities that have opted out of the hybrid service delivery model and their service delivery standards with respect to not being a direct funder of the model in that regard. So those are details that we need to look further into. And so with that, I promise I'm almost done. You can see the motion up on your screen. Both Randy and the warden have touched on the motion, but again, we'd just like to reiterate that we're not looking for a decision today on a yes or no with respect to the hybrid model. What we're looking for is some early feedback and some direction to send this back to our member municipalities such that they can have good, wholesome discussions on the model. And so with that, that's the end of my presentation. Madam Warden, maybe just before I turn it back to you, I'll just touch base with Deputy CAO Schertzer to see if there's anything else he'd like to add in this regard before we open it back up.
I think you've covered it well, Scott. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Director Taylor, and also Deputy CAO Schertzer as well. So yes, so the motion that we have moved and seconded to put on the floor for consideration is one to receive the report. So in a moment, we'll open it up for questions that people may have about clarifications so that they can take that with them as they continue to have a discussion back at their home municipalities. This is the opportunity with our staff available to answer those. If there is a specific question regarding starting the slide, it would be helpful to us if we knew what slide number or what the slide title was, and then that way we could put it back on the screen for everybody to follow through. So that is what we are doing. We are receiving the report, and we are also considering sending correspondence to each of the municipalities to ask. And as Director Taylor and Deputy CAO Schertzer have said, even for a response to come back from a municipality saying that they are in principle supportive of a hybrid model, it is not a commitment at that point. There will be a later process where there'll be an opportunity for each municipality to do an opt-in or opt-out. So that is what we are considering. So any discussion should be on questions and clarifications for staff so that we have all the information together here as a body of all of the municipalities gathered together, and we have the same information and hear the same answers to the same questions. And then the consideration should be about sending that piece of correspondence to the municipalities. We should not be engaging in, at this point in time, a discussion on opinions about whether or not we think this is a good idea or not a good idea. This is an opportunity to get all the information provided and to consider the decision to be made as a whole together is, should we send those letters out to the municipalities asking them to discuss and declare their in principle support for a hybrid model. So with that, I can see one hand coming up, and then I will ask those who are in chambers with the clerks, if the clerk would just use a hand raised at any of the 9 municipalities, if they wish to gather a question and answer of somebody who is not directly logged on. So with that, and it'll be helpful too, just for the benefit of the 70 participants that we have here online today, please introduce yourself before asking your question. Introduce yourself, your position, and which municipality you're from. And with that, we will begin with Councillor McKinley.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So Town of Blue Mountains Councillor Sean McKinley here. Thank you, Scott, for your presentation. I wanted to ask one thing, and I'm not going to stray from the matter at hand. Just that and I can appreciate you have a long list of information to gather, but one key piece that I did not see that maybe got missed or wasn't sent in, but I'm going to ask it now, maybe to add to your long list of work. What about the pay equity part? What is the county's grid, and what are all the pay grids for all the appropriate municipalities that are in the county? Does that make sense, Scott or Mr. Taylor? Because quite frankly, we can't have the county, you can't, obviously, if you're going to absorb staff from other municipalities, you can't pay them less. But we also want to maybe work together, not to be stepping on each other's toes, to be paying outright more than what the next municipality is. Does that ring through? Or Mr. Schertzer, whoever wants to take that?
Okay, we'll go to the Deputy CAO.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Warden, and thank you for that question, Councillor McKinley. As you noted, it will be part of that further investigations. We did some initial investigations, as Scott noted earlier. Our Director of HR has had discussions with each of your municipal HR staff, looking at making sure that if there was any movement towards this proposed model, that if staff were to then become county staff, what does that pay grid equivalency look like? And from a general perspective, what I can say is that there will be at least the same amount of pay that would be offered and provided based on what's currently being provided to those staff today. But again, we'd have to dig into that further, recognizing that was 2024 analysis. So we'd have to look into the 2025 numbers just to confirm that.
Is there a follow-up, Councillor McKinley?
Yes, thank you, Madam Warden. Yeah, just to be clear, Mr. Schertzer, I can appreciate that. I just mean that to make sure to do a full analysis of the pay grids of all the municipalities. Does that, okay? I see you nodding. Thank you.
Yes. So that was looking at all the pay grids of all the municipalities as well as the current county pay grid. So that analysis was done in 2024 numbers. We just need to confirm in 2025 numbers, but for the most part, it looked positive.
Okay, thank you very much for that question and for that answer. I do not see any further virtual hands. Here comes one. I'll go to West Gray. We have Jeff Shea from West Gray, and please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, Jeffrey Shea, West Gray Councillor. I just wanted to ask the county staff how common this model is across the province. Is this a direction that is becoming a best practice in this industry? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who would like to answer that from staff? Director Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Warden, through you, and thank you for your question, Councillor Shea. When we first started looking into this this approach earlier on, early last year, we had done a survey at that time of all the counties across the province in that regard. And I think we had about 19 responses. And what we got from that was there was really sort of three models that were emergent across the county. So they're across the province, sorry. So there was a model similar to what Gray currently has, where you had planners at both the county and municipal levels. There was the centralized model. And so the best local example of that is Bruce County, where technically you only have planners at the county level, and they serve both the county and member municipalities. And then you had the hybrid model, which is what's currently being investigated. And as I said in my presentation, the most local example of the hybrid model would be Wellington County in that regard, where you have some municipalities in Wellington that are only served by the county planners and some that are served by local and county planners. So I don't know the exact breakdown of how many municipalities or how many counties and municipalities across the province use a hybrid model versus how many do not. But it's certainly a model that's out there. And I can say that, I'm familiar with a number of municipalities or a number of counties that do. It's certainly something we could look into as part of the further research. But one of the things I'd highlight here, and one of the early impetuses for investigating this model that I think Deputy CAO Searcher touched on in his presentation, is the staffing challenges that we're seeing for planners across the province. And simply put, most municipalities and most counties can't attract the staff they need because there's more planning jobs than planners in the province right now. And so one of the benefits to potentially that hybrid model is the ability to grow talent from within and the ability to potentially attract staff to a larger grouping of planners that might be more attractive to some. So rather than being a single incumbent. So just to loop back, we will certainly investigate further in terms of the other counties that offer this hybrid system, and we can provide more detailed answer on sort of the exact breakdown at the time of a future staff report in that regard.
Okay, thank you. And is there a follow-up to that question? Okay, thank you. So next we'll move on to the Deputy Mayor of Southgate, Barbara DeBreen.
Thank you. And through you, good morning, everyone. Just a question for consideration, should this go to the next stage? I would imagine it's not something that I expect an answer at this time, but if a municipality opts in, will consideration be given to an exit clause should the new model or the hybrid model not be serving its local residents as it had been anticipated? So in a joint services model, is something to consider in how, if it's not working out, is there an exit clause? And to follow up Councillor McKinley's question about wages, in determining an appropriate wage or an appropriate salary and benefits, municipalities don't currently follow what other municipalities are paying their roads crews, their planners, their clerks, or even their counselors for that matter. So it'll be interesting to find out where that balance lies, where you are asking or where we're expecting that we can't offer more to attract talent. That's just a question for consideration at a later date. Thank you.
Okay. We'll go to the Deputy CAO.
Thank you, and through you, Warden, and thank you for those questions, Councillor DeBreen. Those will be part of, no doubt, the next steps and part of those detailed investigations. Based on previous discussions, both with the CEO group as well as internally here with staff, is ensuring that there's those proper communication channels as part of that MOU. Just making sure that if they're obviously the service level expectations being spelled out in the MOU, but making sure that we have those check-ins to make sure that it's working and meeting expectations. And we hope that through some of that, those discussions and conversations, if there's any adjustments that need to be made, we can make those adjustments to meet those service expectations. So we hope it doesn't get to a point where where folks have to use an exit clause, but no doubt typically with any type of agreement, there would be some sort of exit clause, so to speak, and proper notice and a time period to do so. So that would be part of the discussions for sure. And just going back to the wages and benefits, and similar to the question earlier from Councillor McKinley, yeah, that will be part. We've done some initial investigations. We think overall, from a both wages and benefits perspective, it's pretty comparable, or maybe a slight difference or increase on say the wages side, some slight differences on the benefit side, but for the most part, it's pretty comparable. And but we can bring back some of that further information again once we dig into it to make sure and confirm 2025 numbers and benefits that are currently being provided.
Follow up?
Yes, a follow-up, Deputy Mayor Dobreen.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just to that point, if a individual lived locally to a municipality and was then being transferred to Owen Sound, I would expect that they would be losing if the wage was the same in Southgate. Now they have to travel to Owen Sound. So those are the nuances of that investigation, and I appreciate that staff is very sensitive to that and finding the right balance. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And next we'll move on to the City of Owen Sound. So I will look to Madam Clerk of Owen Sound.
Thank you, Warden. Councillor Middleborough would like to make a few comments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Warden. My question is for municipalities who do decide to opt out. How is the funding model going to be set up? So my concern would be if the City of Owen Sound decided to opt out, because we do have an existing planning department that is relatively fully staffed. How can we be assured that, let's say, 3 opt out, 6 opt in, and the county has to hire more planners, that your costs are going to go up? We're fully funding a planning department here in Owen Sound, that we're not going to also be paying for an increased planning department at the county. So would it be funded through application fees and the municipalities using the service? How can we be assured that we wouldn't be paying double?
Okay, we'll go to the Deputy CAO.
Thank you, and through you, Warden, and thank you for that question, Councillor Middleborough. So again, that's part of some of those next steps in terms of those investigations, in terms of who's opting in principle, and then digging into some of those financial details and looking at what that financial model will look like. Again, through early discussions on what it could look like. One, as Scott noted, is that we would need to update our county fees and services bylaw based on, as well as updates to probably the municipal bylaws that are participating in the model to ensure there's alignment there, to ensure if there's fees that are still required to be collected to support services that are still provided by the local municipal staff, that those are covered through your municipal services bylaws or fees bylaws, and then a good chunk of the revenue from at least on an average basis for each applications that are processed by the county staff being providing those services both at the county level and the municipal level. So those bylaws would need to be updated. We think a good chunk of that would cover some of the fees, but not all the fees. And so we anticipate that those municipalities that would opt in would have to pay some sort of fee to provide those services to those municipalities. Be very similar to we have GIS services that are currently provided to our municipalities. 6 of our 9 municipalities where again, fees are provided from the municipalities to the county in order to provide those services back to the local municipalities. We don't know what those numbers will look like, and that's part of those next investigations. In terms of those that opt out, we think it will just remain status quo in terms of what you currently are paying your or budgeting for to provide your services at the local municipal level, and the equivalent on the county side to continue to provide those services in a two-tier system. So hopefully that answers the question, but that's part of the next investigations that we'll have to dig into further.
Okay, let me go back to the City of Owen Sound then for either follow-up or any additional questions before I move down the other raised hands. So back again to you, Madam Clerk at Owen Sound.
Through you, Warden, Councillor Merton has some comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. And through you, Warden. Thank you for the comprehensive information that's been sent to us. There is a lot of words and a lot of text. Is it possible to consider a planning process mapping tool that helps to guide us visually through hybrid as well as status quo, and then consider flowcharts and decision trees as we move through this to be able to get a sense of the flow? We often have heard the words we need to look at, but I'm wondering if there's a way to also add to the tools that you're currently using. Thank you.
Okay, Director Taylor.
Thank you for that. Through you, Madam Warden. Thank you for your question, Councillor Martin. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. As planners, sometimes maybe we tend to rely too much on long text explanations where a graphic would maybe be much simpler. So simple, as part of those further investigations, we could certainly sit down with the potential participating municipalities and dig into what their existing processes look like. We externally have some idea of what those processes look like, but there might be other things happening behind the scenes that we're not necessarily aware of. And also compare and contrast those with our own internal county processes and put together some diagrams to help both municipal councils, but also members of the public or developers understand what a process might look like under a new hybrid model versus how those applications would be processed under the current model. So point well taken, and it's certainly something we can invest time into developing with those potential participating municipalities as we go forward here.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk of Owen Sound, is there any follow-up or any additional questions?
To you, Warden, we have no further comments from within council chambers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to the Deputy Mayor of the Town of Blue Mountains, Deputy Mayor Bourdignon.
Thank you, Madam Warden, through you. And keeping in line with the comments from Owen Sound, especially Councillor Middleborough, we have a fully staffed planning department. One thing with the added pressures coming to if this hybrid model does go through, is there thought as you're relooking at the entire planning structure about maybe subdivision approvals and maybe putting things more back onto the lower tier municipalities that can handle that or have so there's less replication at the county level to the local level, and that could save efficiencies both in human resource time and fiscal time from the development community, if you see where I'm going with this. So there may be opportunity to, if one or two pull out and stand alone, to give them more responsibility. Just a thought process on that, Scott or Randy.
Okay, Director Taylor.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Warden. Thank you for your question, Councillor Bourdignon. I'll maybe take an initial cut at this answer and invite Randy to join in too. So there was a staff report done under the last term of council that investigated this notion of further delegations from county council to member municipal councils, and certainly subdivisions and condominiums and part lot control bylaws were the main part of the subject matter covered in that report. Certainly, some neighboring counties have already delegated those approvals, and as I noted earlier, Owen Sound already has those approvals stemming back from when they were a separated municipality from the county. So the recommendation in that staff report was that if a municipality is interested in exploring those delegations further, we requested a motion from the municipal council saying, yeah, let's chat about this further. We're interested, because it's quite a process sort of administratively to delegate that. You know, the actual passing of the bylaws, so to speak, by the two respective councils would be maybe the relatively simple part, but getting into the transfer of those files and records management and what happens to files that were already in process and everything else, that takes some time. And so when we drafted that report, we leaned heavily on the county of Simcoe at the time, who had delegated subdivision approval to most of their municipalities, and they were quite candid in sharing, you know, the municipalities that were the early delegates in that regard went through an abbreviated process that maybe wasn't the best process, versus they learned some lessons along the way and had some great suggestions. So certainly, from staff's perspective, the potential for delegation is still definitely on the table. We'd be happy to chat about that with municipal staff or with municipal council in that regard. And if municipal council see fit to pass a motion to consider requesting that delegation, then we'd look at entering into a similar MOU, spelling out the terms of that delegation. But certainly turn it over to Deputy CAO Schertzer if he has any further comments there.
Yeah, through you, Warden. I think you covered it well, Scott. I think, as Scott indicated, I think that option is still on the table. It's part of the overall umbrella of potential planning efficiencies that could be considered, and we're happy to have those conversations and discussions if municipalities are interested in looking at delegating approvals to the local municipalities to look for those potential efficiencies. Happy to have those discussions.
Is there a follow-up? Yes.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, thank you. Thank you, Madam Warden. Yeah, no, I read the report, and I know that report, and Owen Sound, when they separate, I have all that. I'm just wondering, from the people like yourself, you know, with Scott and Randy, the positions that you are, I'm more thinking about because if you take on more work, you're going to need more staff, and that. Do you think that would help alleviate pressures, as well as, I know we could request at any time if that's something that we choose to do, and I'm not saying we are, I'm just putting hypothetical. Do you think that's an opportunity for to relieve some pressures as you take on more planning? It was more of my question from the experience that you have in your two roles.
Anything further?
Through you, Madam Warden. Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, I misunderstood your initial question, Councillor Bourdignon. I think it's something that could certainly be investigated. One of the thoughts under either a centralized model or now a hybrid model is that collectively the county and member municipalities wouldn't necessarily be taking on more staff, but rather it would be a consolidation of staff. So if municipality X had two planners and that was a participating municipality, those two planners would come up to the county. And as Randy highlighted, one of the benefits of sort of that consolidation would hopefully be reduced duplication. And so for that fictional municipality X, if you had a subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment application, then it would be one county planner under the new model reviewing that, rather than having a county planner and a member municipal planner also reviewing that. So we think there could be some efficiencies there. And so, you know, as much as the county might be taking on more responsibility, we'd also have more bench strength, so to speak, to do so, because we'd have those participating municipal planners, some of which are very, very experienced and bring lots of interesting experience to the table. But certainly, we weren't looking at this model to be the end of the discussion on efficiencies. And so if there's further efficiencies to be found, whether that's in improving existing processes or whether that's in looking at those sort of opt-out municipalities and how those structures work between the county and member municipalities, we're definitely open to exploring that. Everybody's got plenty of work on their plates. So if there's the opportunity to shift some of the work on their plates, both at the council and staff level, speaking purely as staff, I would definitely be interested in exploring that further.
Okay, thank you very much. So next we'll move on to Mayor Kentner from Meaford.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Warden. I first want to just simply thank the county for the ability to keep our options open throughout this entire process. And I think that's an excellent model for the future, because hopefully we will be looking at some efficiencies that we can develop between the two levels of municipal government. And I think that, as I say, it would be you've got a great template here now for going forward on other efficiency projects. But I just want to say it's not looking like this is a cost-free transition to the hybrid system. And so you know, it would be nice if we could see some economic efficiency, you know, from the get-go, but it's not looking that way. And so I'm just going to suggest that we could really benefit from seeing the numbers crunched before we actually had to, you know, make a final decision on this. And that's my input. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll put that in the form of a question to, yes, Deputy CAO.
Yes, and thank you through your warden, and thank you for that question, Councillor Kettner. And for sure, that is part of the next steps, is to crunch some of those numbers further. Part of the request to identify at least opting in principle is to then be able to dig into some of those financial details and look at what that financial model would look like. Whether it be, is it cost neutral for those municipalities that be opting in? Are there some potential cost savings? We won't know that until we dig into some of those further details. But we would have those details as part of that next steps and bring that back to this body to be able to make some final decisions then in terms of whether or not you're fully opting in at that stage based on those crunching of numbers.
Okay, thank you. Is there a follow-up, Mayor Kettner? Okay, thank you. So next we will go to Councillor Ardell of the Town of Blue Mountains.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And further to our Deputy Mayor, Peter Bourgaud, about the delegation approvals, I believe, and it's going back some years because I was the Deputy Mayor at that time, we talked about delegated approvals being put to the municipalities, and especially our municipality, the Blue Mountains. And I don't know whatever happened to that discussion. And I know that Owen Sound has had it, you know, previously before they joined the county, and then they kept their own approvals. So we had asked about that, and I'm just wondering where those discussions went and why they were lost, or how we can get back into that discussion again, because we are at a full complement here, or we were. And so I'm just looking that we are a unique municipalities. We have planners here. We are a busy municipality, and just wondering about that. We haven't talked about this at the table, but I have the history where we go back and we have asked for it, but we were never granted that. So Mr. Searcher and Scott Taylor were there when I was there. So if I could have some dialogue about that, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Director Taylor.
Point of order. It's Ian Body and Owen Sound. I'm not sure that's on the topic that we were discussing today or should be discussed today. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Director Taylor, can you respond within the context of what we're discussing on receiving your report today?
Through you, Madam Warden, I will try, and if I go offline, please feel free to cut me off. Further to the previous answer to Councillor Bourdignon, it's certainly something staff are open to discussing further. In terms of the history of Grey County planning, there were some delegations made at the time of amalgamation. There used to be a county land division committee. At that point, land division was transferred to the member municipalities, and now we have municipal committees of adjustment. The discussion has come up in various forms in my 20 years at the county, but most recently, like I said, it was in the last term of council, and we prepared a rather lengthy staff report on this topic. So if it's appropriate, maybe I could re-forward that staff report to municipal staff and or the clerks, and they could share with their councils, and we could pick this discussion up at a later date for those municipalities that are interested in discussing further.
Okay, thank you, Director Taylor. I think that would be a good idea to provide those who may or may not have been historically here to understand the background context when considering what the current topic is. Councillor Ardell, is there any follow-up within the context of this report?
No, thank you very much, and look forward to receiving the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I do not see any further hands up. I'll just wait a moment to see if any of the clerks raise their hand because they've gathered a question in their chambers. Okay, I am not seeing Madam Clerk. I am not seeing any further hands up. So that means that we have come to the end of our discussion for this. And what I'm going to do is first, in a moment, I will call the vote and ask if there are any opposed because some are dialed in directly. But then I am going to take a moment to check in with each of the clerks from each of the municipalities just to make sure that we have a gathering of any hands that may be not seen here virtually, but may come up in the chamber as this vote is called. So in that case, then I'm going to proceed. I do not see any further hands up for discussion. So I'm going to call the vote and I'm going to ask for anyone. Oh, yes, Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Just before we do proceed to the vote, I just wanted to note that Councillor Doug Hutchinson did have to leave the meeting at 11, so he's not in the meeting anymore. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So with that procedural note, then I will now call the vote. Are there any opposed? Any opposed to the motion that we are considering? Any opposed? Okay, I will just confirm then with each of the clerks. I'll go to Madam Clerk of Chatsworth and CAO.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Nothing further here.
Thank you. I'll go to Madam Clerk of Georgian Bluffs.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I am not seeing any opposed from Georgian Bluffs.
Thank you. Madam Clerk of Grey Highlands.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Sorry, my apologies. There's no one opposed from Grey Highlands.
Madam Clerk of Hanover.
Thank you, Madam Warden. There are no opposed from the town of Hanover.
Thank you. Madam Clerk of Meaford.
Thank you, Madam Warden. No one opposed from the municipality of Meaford.
Madam Clerk of Owen Sound.
To your warden, we have no one opposed from Owen Sound.
Madam Clerk of the Blue Mountains.
Thank you, Madam Warden. There are no opposition in the Blue Mountains.
Madam Clerk of Southgate.
Thank you, Madam Warden. There are no opposition in the Township of Southgate.
And Madam Clerk of West Grey.
Through your warden, that's okay. There are no members opposed from West Grey.
Okay, thank you. Too much habit. Okay, so we've heard and there are no hands raised to oppose, so I will declare that that motion has carried. Thank you. Next, we will go to the bylaw. And for this, I will read out the recommendation, call for a mover and a seconder, and then after discussion, we'll do what we had done traditionally, where I'll just simply look for any hands raised for opposed and ask that the clerks do that if they need to represent an opposition within their chamber hall. Okay, so the recommendation is that bylaw 2025-01 being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings with Grey County joint all council meeting held March 21st, 2025 being acted and passed this 21st day of March 2025. May I ask for a mover and a seconder with a virtual hand, please? Okay, so it's moved by Councillor Allwood, Deputy Mayor, but also Councillor on Grey County, thank you. And it's seconded by Mayor Carlton, also County Councillor of Georgian Bluffs. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this motion for the bylaw? Okay, Madam Clerk, I am seeing no hands raised. So if there is no discussion, I will call the vote. All those, any of those who are opposed, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, and this one, I'm gonna just do one more call. Any opposed? I'll ask the clerks to raise a hand if there's any opposed. Okay, so Madam Clerk, I will declare that that motion is passed.
Thank you.
And That allows us to move on to a motion to adjourn this joint meeting. And so I will then ask for a mover and a seconder. I see it moved by Mayor Milne of Southgate and seconded by the Deputy Mayor of the town of Blue Mountains to adjourn. As this just before, while we were in discussion, just before I call the vote for that, I will say it has been wonderful that I thank you so much to everyone who has taken the time out of all of your busy, both council schedules and personal schedules on a Friday to be able to join us. I thought the questions were very helpful. I think you've given staff some good direction in terms of kind of extra information to provide in due process. And we do look forward with that action that we have taken today to send out that correspondence and hear further feedback from the 9 municipalities. So wonderful to see everybody here virtually, but I am also looking forward to the number of cross-county events that we have scheduled coming up in the spring and summer. So it'll be a pleasure to be able to actually shake your hand in person and be able to see you in person in the next few months. So with that then, with no further discussion, I will call the vote. Are there any opposed to adjourning? Any opposed to adjourning? Madam Clerk, I see no hands. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy your day.